Welcome back to Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. We need to stop the insatiable need to knock the creative works of others. It's bad enough that people feel the need to judge the work of others and then pass along that judgment to the masses. Now there are people who denigrate works that they haven't even seen. Criticizing what others do in this life is not the equivalent of doing things in this life. Let's start with a simple truth. Not everything is made for everyone. Not everything is for you. Not everything is for the person who critiques it. I had this taught to me by one of my children. I pointed out to him that the kids' movie he wanted to go see had really bad reviews. He said, "This movie isn't made for the grown-up who reviewed it." Every week, I suggest that you watch for clues. What do I mean by that? I think that we're surrounded by clues, many of which come in the forms of books, TV, movies, songs, and every branch of the arts. I think the very clue that you need to move to the next level may be a concept or even just a sentence that is expressed in one of the forms of art. When I live intuitively, which is always my goal, I find that I'm drawn to art forms that have some sort of connected theme that they're expressing. When something strikes my interest, I usually find it also expressed in another form, meaning this is an issue that I need to address. But I can only pick up the clues that are pointed at those in my particular grade level. The rest of it is not for me, at least not at this time. Understanding this has changed the way I feel about the arts in general. There's some TV shows or movies that I can't imagine anyone wanting to watch, and some of those shows get renewed, those movies get remade over and over and over. They're speaking to someone, just not me. And it may not be for you, but it is for someone. First graders need the clues from the work produced by those with a second grade level of spiritual awareness. Fifth graders need the clues from the work produced by the sixth graders. Ninth graders need the clues from the work produced by 10th graders. There's no way around it. A movie that is made to appeal to the 9th grade crowd will only ping for people in, say, grades 8 through 10. That's it. We need to allow everyone, without judgment, to access the art that is geared toward their current level. It may be the exact way that they can move forward. If a 9th grader deems a piece of work done by a 2nd grader to be garbage, they are denying that the material once held a clue that moved them forward, and they're trying to shut down such works, which would leave all these people stuck in the 1st grade. The need to trash work that is geared to the lower levels is not a high-level move. Trashing work that is over your head means it may not be there when you grow to this space where it is exactly what you need. Also, don't ever be turned away from art that others find no use for if you're drawn to it. If there's a movie you are drawn to see, I suspect it holds a clue for you. It may be tiny, it may be the only redeeming part of the movie, but it's a wholly necessary clue that you need to move forward. If you walk away from a movie with one good line that really pinged for you, that was a huge success. Whatever you are drawn to holds a clue. If you feel compelled to watch a movie multiple times or listen to a song over and over, there is something there that you need. Get it. Each of us is hardwired to receive clues in certain forms. I, personally, can't hear clues that are delivered in a science fiction setting. I just don't have that gene. It just isn't an interest. But the messages delivered in a science fiction format are also told in dramas, comedies, period pieces, podcasts, and books of all kinds. We all find the genres of music that we enjoy the most. That doesn't make all other forms automatic garbage. It's just our wiring. We are wired to like some things better than others, much in the way that you may be wired to, say, like blue better than green. We are also wired to produce art at our current level of spiritual awareness. Much like the art you would produce today, the story you would write, the song you would sing, the picture you would paint, is quite different from what your best work was when you were in Earth School, 3rd grade. So it is with every artist on the planet. They must do what reflects their current level of awareness. The happy accident of you liking an album someone made a couple of years ago, when you just happen to be at or near the same level of spiritual awareness, says nothing about how you will feel about the next album. To like someone's early work or their later work says nothing at all about the art or the artist. It just means you synced up at that point, and maybe you don't now. Since we all grow at different rates, it should never be assumed that you're going to feel the same about anything or anyone years from now. This can become crystal clear when you watch a comic who you once thought was funny and thought-provoking, who you now can't figure out what you ever saw in them. The comic most likely stayed the same, and you grew past them. But as that is happening, there's a whole new set of people in the grades behind you who will suddenly discover that this comic is fantastic. The comic stayed the same while one audience grew past and another grew into their work. Sometimes the comic grows faster than the audience, which leaves former fans confused by the new material and a whole new grade level finding interest in their work. This is nothing that should be taken personally. It's just how the system works. The beauty of it is there's always change. There's always something new to appreciate and to fuel our growth. Love and respect to all the clue droppers. You do so much more than entertain. The very first choices you made before arriving at this school were: 1. What DNA did you want? 2. Who did you want to raise and nurture you? 3. When did you want to be born? These choices were critical because they created the perfect structure within which you could work out what you came here to do. Your DNA gave you the exact body with the exact wiring that you needed to get the job done. Your body has provided part of your curriculum, either giving it a battleground to find strength through fighting disease, dealing with limitations, or providing an arena within which to practice discipline. It can also be a huge part of a curriculum which is about radical self-acceptance. Your choices defined your challenges, and the attributes you chose are designed to meet those challenges. Your ancestors left you with a whole pile of DNA attributes from which to choose. You put together the entire package of your physical self by choosing the bits and pieces that others have tried on before, yet in a combination that is uniquely your own. The physical packaging you designed can be seen as a great clue into who you came here to be. If you chose a body style that is 6'4" in height, you probably didn't come here to be a jockey. The choice of who would raise you was equally important to the DNA choice. Souls who chose someone other than the source of the DNA to nurture them usually moved into what was more likely a positive situation. They often departed a situation where the parent would be unable to perform their duties and into the home of someone who desperately wanted to raise them. That's a move up. They can choose people who might understand their life course curriculum better than the people who contributed the DNA. Or they may have decided that they wanted both the DNA and the family dynamic the biological mother and or father could provide. Souls who want very specific DNA can move pieces around from the other side to bring the chosen people together, even knowing that the two may not have what it takes in the long run to stay together. You decided when you would be born to both get the attributes that came with that and to fit into the part of the Earth story you were equipped to influence. This being the case, it shifts the focus away from your disappointment with parents and caregivers to the questions that really matter. What about this DNA serves your purpose this time around? What about the parents or caregivers you chose served your growth? Remember, they could have been kind and loving or thoughtless and cruel. You may have chosen one of each. There was something about that choice that was specifically meant to move your story forward. Did you choose parents who were at higher levels than you, giving you the opportunity to grow up to where they were? Or did you choose to come here to raise your parents who were at a lower level of awareness? Understanding these choices outside of the cultural narrative shifts focus to the work at hand. Not understanding them creates a lifetime of misery. There's a documentary on Netflix about Kevyn Aucoin. Kevyn was a magnificent makeup artist. I had to watch this documentary multiple times because it was such a stark example of these choices. In it, Kevyn absolutely nailed all of his choices. But the culture that doesn't understand the choices told him time and time again that he was damaged, unwanted. They convinced him that he had suffered what they would call a primal wound that cannot be healed. He believed the culture and was made miserable by it until the end of his life. Here's the deal. Kevyn's birth mother was 15 when she gave birth. She was in no position to raise him in any healthy way. More importantly, his birth mother, years later when she met her grown son, proudly declared that if she had raised him, he would not be doing makeup, and he would not be gay. She said if he had done makeup, she would have whipped his tail. She was unhappy with who he turned out to be, and ultimately couldn't accept him. She could only accept the sons she raised, who were perfectly ordinary backwoods men. She was saying this as if it was some noble way of fixing what she found damaged about Kevyn. But everything about Kevyn made up his brilliance. He was possibly the greatest makeup artist of our generation. He brought joy and beauty into the lives of many and had a spectacular life, except for this gnawing doubt he had about his origin story. Had he stayed with his birth mother, he would have been abused into being someone completely ordinary. The greatest abuse of all is not allowing someone to be who they are. When that person came here, not to hurt others, but to help them see their own beauty and greatness, he chose beautifully the people who could love him exactly as he was, and the people who would support him becoming the highest form of his own self-expression. Had his thinking not been infected by the cultural message that the most important thing about you is if your birth mother loves and accepts you, he would have known that he should have been doing a victory lap. He brilliantly chose before coming here to have 2 people contribute the DNA and another couple, people who would love, support, and encourage him, to be the ones who raised him. The only discernible thing he got from his birth mother, besides a sense of vanity, was her obsession with her porcelain dolls and their perfect faces. His adoptive parents adored him the way he was and started a chapter of PFLAG in their town. Kevyn's pre-Earth choices were excellent, but the culture we built around adoption made him see it as a failure. The cultural messaging around adoption is the exact opposite of the reality. Kevyn's birth mother didn't reject him. He rejected her. He chose her, knowing full well that he would only be getting DNA. He chose her because she had the DNA he wanted, and there was no way he could or would be nurtured by her. He knew better before he even got here. She didn't have the power to reject him. He had already decided the terms of their relationship, and for obvious, valid reasons, he chose to be nurtured by a loving couple who accepted him for all the aspects of his being. They loved him, accepted him, sent him to school to learn how to do makeup. They allowed him full expression of his talents and the full unfolding of his reason for being here. The fact that the culture damaged him and made him feel unloved and powerless is tragic. Anthropology is an essential study when you want to get down to the bones of actual truth. Our culture tells us what our birth experience is supposed to be and who is supposed to raise us, but that's not a universal truth. In other cultures, they have traditions of giving their newborns to the relatives they honor. The first child they keep may be the 4th child or later. Other cultures choose the person who is most equipped to raise a baby and then send that baby wherever their help is most needed once they become useful. Some cultures think the worst person to raise a child is the natural mother because she will not be objective, thereby raising a less than optimal child. The point being that none of this is essential truth. It's just whatever we say it is. And the cultures in which they do it differently than we do, they don't label the child as broken or the victim of primal wounds. That, too, is just something that we tell ourselves. The essential truth is that children who have someone who loves, nurtures, and protects them, they're all set up to live a good and useful life. The biggest takeaway from this, in my opinion, is that we need to stop feeling bad about whatever our birth situation was and instead invest our efforts into understanding exactly what we wanted and needed from the choices that we made. Our choices ask the important questions. Our choices expose the level of difficulty we chose to take on. Assume that your choices were perfect. Next week, we're going to talk about who we attract and what that tells us about ourselves. Tell everyone you know that they can find Rebirth Revolution on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and Podbean. It would be great if you could subscribe, rate the podcast, and leave a review. Our international reach is growing. Welcome, UK listeners. If you would like to have the question of the week, you can post it on Facebook, send it through Facebook Messenger, leave it on Twitter or Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. Until next week, be open, be aware, watch for clues, and consume some art that you feel drawn to. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Have a wonderful week.